So it wasn't until 2001 that I started singing and acting full time. And I was singing more pop music because that's what I grew up on. I grew up on songs from the 80s and the 90s, and then some songs from the 70s that my parents played for me. So I was singing more contemporary songs at first. I had a guitar duo. A friend of mine, Lou Duvin, and I worked together just singing our favorite songs. And I wouldn't say that this was, I wasn't into the hot new thing. At the time it was neo-soul. So me with my guitar, people are like, oh, are you a neo-soul artist? I'm like, no, that's not really what I'm going for. Because I grew up singing Whitney Houston. But then, and then for a hot minute, my Lou Duvin and I had a band called Fortified, was the name of the band, and we had a lot of original songs, most that Lou wrote, and then we co-wrote a couple songs together. And it was a 5-piece band. We'd rehearse all week and for like a month leading up to a gig just to do one set of original music and make $125 between the entire band. So then we figured out we had to figure out how to make a living doing this music thing. And so Lou and I were playing around town. We got some awards, from the New Times and Best Solo Musician or Best Musicians, Best Local Musicians. And then we were invited to perform at a club called Jazzed on Washington Avenue in Miami Beach that at the time had 4 nights of jazz. And so we were doing the Love Hour, opening up for this jazz quartet with a vocalist. And so I stayed around after our sets week after week and was introduced to jazz. And I was beside myself that I had never heard these songs, had never, made the connection between Frank Sinatra and Fly Me to the Moon, or Ella Fitzgerald and Someone to Watch Over Me, all these songs, Night and Day, Cole Porter. So I just drowned myself in as many CDs as I could find, from Ella Fitzgerald, Nancy Wilson, Dinah Washington, and Sarah Vaughan. I think those were my first influences. In 2002. And then shortly after my first few months of doing that gig, the bass player in the quartet invited me. He said, why don't you learn some jazz songs and do a gig with us? And so that's what I did. I did everything that I could to put together my first set of songs. I think I still have that song list. It's 22 songs. April 2002 was my first gig as a jazz musician. And I remember distinctly having time after time on my set list, thinking, oh, okay, I don't even have to look up, because I found it in a fake book, in a jazz fake book. I was like, oh, I know that song. I don't have to study that song. Little did I know that Time After Time was not the Cyndi Lauper tune that I thought I knew. It was actually Time After Time. So that was a really funny moment. Then they started playing the song, and I'm like, Time After Time in C. And I was like, what song is this? But I fell in love with discovering these wonderful lyrics, these wonderful stories that I was really frustrated with music at the time, because I wasn't convinced that I had to write all my own music. I wanted to find songs, and I wanted somebody to write me songs and make me famous. And so in not finding a lot of contemporary songs in the early 2000s that I wanted to sing and wanted to cover, really going back to the 80s and the 90s or 70s for material, out of frustration, I was like, wow, I could dive into this new music to me and just discover these gems that have these gorgeous stories, poetic lyrics. And I was sold. That was it for me. So I went on to record my first album in 2003, and I think I have recorded about 5 jazz albums, all jazz albums since then.